you guys, welcome back. It's your girl Denise with Real Life with Denise, and today we're going to talk about why relationships, friendships, whatever you want to call it, ships, just partnerships, why they often sink. Now, this reason may not be the ultimate reason, but it does contribute to why most or some relationships sink. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm quite sure you know what this means. And if you don't know what it means, let's talk about it. So, people often like to criticize, but they don't like criticism. Let me say it again, so I can make sure the people in the back hear me. People like to criticize, but they don't like criticism. And that is why most, maybe some, relationships sink. Because people like to always give their opinion, give their judgment, say how things should be. Because in their brains, oftentimes they feel like it should be their way. And then when you come back with the rebuttal or try to say, agree to disagree, the other party is like, nope, they're not trying to hear it. They don't want to know what you got to say. They feel like their way is right. What we call like stubborn. And then that becomes a trend, right? And then it becomes a thing. And then the next thing you know, the friendship has just drifted off to where you're barely talking. The relationship may eventually end. The whatever ship is like, you know what? Because they wasn't fully vested in it in the first place, is null and void. And the way to prevent that from happening is communication. Communication is huge because you want to make sure in the beginning that everybody is on the same page, that you can agree to disagree, that you can, if I say, you know what, this is my opinion and you give me your opinion and we try to meet in the middle, or we just say, you know what, I see what you're saying, but I don't really know if that's how I'm feeling. And the other person is like, yeah, but I'm kind of feeling this way. And then you move on from it. Oftentimes we get stuck in how we feel that we are not willing to give grace to the other person. And that's on both sides, because we all know that we all think differently. We all process things differently. And so in turn, oftentimes where we feel like we're doing it right this way, or what we like to call the routine, what my routine is, how I think, how I move, how I go on about my day, nobody's gonna come in and disrupt that, right? Even though sometimes, you know that saying, well, I'm looking from the outside in, the person on the outside, i.e. your partner, your friend, or whatever, may say, you know what? Well, maybe you should try it this way. And there are some people that are like, no, I'm not doing it this way. I don't want it this way. But then oftentimes are still struggling at trying to do something because they don't want the outside help. But then on the flip side of that, they are the same people who likes to dish it, but can't handle it. See? So we got to be neutral, and we kind of got to be in a space to where we can both agree to either disagree or communicate and move past the issue. And a lot of times people don't want to do that. They hold grudges. So it starts off like this. The conversation is had, then you don't agree, then that turns into you're mad, and then you don't want to talk, then it turns into a grudge, and then it goes much deeper than what it should have been in the beginning if both parties take the time to actually stop, listen to what each other is saying, be able to communicate and move forward. But oftentimes both parties are just trying to and then it's silence. And then nothing gets accomplished because criticism is hard, right? Oftentimes it's easy for us to articulate what we feel about something, but it's hard when somebody articulates what they feel about us. Now, there are some people who can take that and be fine. Like me, I'm the type of person, you say something about me, I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna digest it, right? And then I'm gonna process what you said, and I'm gonna say, well, you know what? Maybe that's how I make them feel, or, you know, vice versa, right? But there are some people who can't process when somebody says anything about them, because that's an internal thing. You know, everybody has internal battles. And so we do have to give grace in some way, shape, or form when it comes to the people in our lives that we deal with, right? However, in the beginning, you have to set your intentions, and you have to be able to communicate to that person how you're feeling. If you don't like something, if you're noticing something is going on that you don't really agree with, you have to be able to tell that person and be in that space, and that person be receptive. That's why I said a lot of people like to criticize, but they don't like criticism, because the criticism part is hard to digest and it's hard to take if you're not open-minded to receive it. Okay? If you're not open-minded to receive it, then ultimately it's kind of like, I don't care what nobody says. Now, that's different than saying, why worry about what people say? They don't put clothes on your back. They don't put food on your table. It's totally different, because when you are actually dealing with somebody that you care about, that you may consider that you want to be in a relationship with, that, you know, you want to spend the rest of your life with, you know, maybe a part of your life in other ways, you care about what they say, what they, you know, how they feel, you know, how they interpret things, right? But just like you care, you got to be receiving to what they say. You can't just care and not care about what they say and how they feel, because we got to understand that the way we move in people's lives is an adjustment. It's an adjustment for somebody to come into your space and to try to tell you, you know, I see you doing this way, but you might want to try it this way. That's an adjustment for someone, because you're used to being like a lot of, you know, even when you hear women say, you know what, I just got in this relationship and I know this man wants to help me with X, Y, and Z, but I'm just so independent. It's an adjustment letting the man pump your gas when you've been pumping your gas for the last 10 years by yourself, right? So we got to be willing to understand both sides, and we got to nurture the people that are important to us, and understand that although, because everybody is guilty of criticizing something, whether you may be guilty of criticizing yourself, I don't know, but a lot of times I'm speaking on relationships and in all kind of ships, right? But in those things, they often sink because one party is criticizing and the other person, it can't take the criticism, or vice versa. And so there is no communication. There is nothing spoken about. And then it becomes a heated argument that in turn turns to other things that might be, you know, fuming, or that, you know, one person hadn't said anything about, and now it's bigger than, you know, it could ever be. Right? Because just imagine being like, I'm gonna use cake icing as an example, right? I don't know. What if I say, well, you know what? I like banana cream versus whipped, is it banana cream, y'all? What is it? Whipped ice. Okay, you got whipped icing and you got buttercream, right? And I say, well, I know you made this cake, right? But I really like whipped icing instead of buttercream. And that person is like, well, you ain't got to eat it then. I mean, I'm just saying, you ain't got to eat it then, right? Because that is what people are quick to do. They are quick to jump and rah, right? When all you are saying is, you're not saying anything about the cake. You're talking about the icing. You're talking about your preference. But to that person, they took the time to make the cake, and they feel like you criticizing the cake, right? So it's also about just slowing down, processing what the person is saying, because that person may just be saying, your cake is great, I just prefer whipped icing, and it's not that deep, right? So I hope in this message that you learn how to navigate, how to process, how to slow down, if you aren't already, right? Because some of you already know that you got it down pat, you know what I mean, and you good, right? But for those of you who really seem to have problems in taking constructive criticism, or always the one to criticize and not being able to process when somebody says something to you or about you or whatever. Take time to analyze those thoughts, analyze those feelings, and see what place that, you know, that person is coming from. Now, with that being said, there are some people that are going to try you and going to criticize every little thing you do, because there are such things as jealousy and different things like that. And you know how it is. It's like, now, if you got to, you know, be a little nice nasty, you know what I mean? I totally get it, right? But if you want a true relationship, friendship, whatever you got going on to work out, take time to listen to that person, process what they're saying, and y'all communicate, and everything's going to be all right. Now, some things may not always be fixable, right? But if it's something that you could talk out and communicate about, because life is short, and what you don't want is to not to leave things open and unsaid and not resolved. You don't want to do that, because it causes bigger problems, right? So again, getting criticized and taking the criticism is totally different. So you know what to do, you know how to handle it now, and I hope to see you on another video. Thank y'all for watching. It's your girl Denise with Real Life with Denise, where we talk real, raw, uncut motivation, beginner concept tips, all the things, right? Talk to y'all later. Bye.